in later, but he is hosting a bunch of company at his house, so he may or may not be in. Other than that, you have me. I'm Mike Marshall. I'm one of the co-founders of Liberty First Foundation, and with me, we have Michael Vaz Vasquez. He is the creator of No Soundbites Allowed, and you can find No Soundbites Allowed on Twitter, YouTube, and various other social media.
Rumble, big on
Rumble, and a whole lot of others. So, Michael, it seems like we are still in that deal where we have a lot of people that are in support of terrorists, namely Hamas.
It is amazing how many members of our college, our future generations of America are so happy to support the terrorist organization Hamas that wants to genocide Israel and America. Hamas wants to kill the very same college students and youth of America that are supporting them.
And here's what they are claiming.
Huh?
And here's what they are claiming.
Yeah, it's really funny, and that's Canada. Again, whether it's in the United States, it's in Europe and the United Kingdom and Canada, in every one of these places, we're seeing that the young progressives who have been sold this idea that socialism will fix everything are the very same people that Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, Iran want to kill. These very same people who are screaming about, oh my God, yeah, they hate Israel. And they're the very same people that these guys are targeting. They have said, oh, you believe in LGB, they want you dead. You want women to drive, you want women to work, you want women to show their hair. They want to kill you. And these are the people they're supporting.
Here, I want to set the record straight. This happened during the Macy's Day Parade.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to bring this up, and I want to point out some very significant things here. Okay. So this is at the Stephen A. Schwarzman building.
The New York Public
Library.
Yeah.
Okay. Schwarzman is a typically Jewish name.
Yeah. And he was.
Okay. We see written up here in red paint, which is to signify blood, free Palestine. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Anti-Semitic in Palestine doesn't exist.
Okay. So they are literally talking about the complete genocide of the Jewish people.
Yes.
Is what they are calling for.
Absolutely.
And they claim that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians. No, Israel has a war against Hamas, not the Palestinian people.
Well, let's put this in.
That's what we need to get straight. And Israel has stated that multiple times.
Well, even before that, let's make it very clear. Israel has always had the capability since 1947 to eliminate the Palestinian people, because there is no nation of Palestine. Does not exist. It has never existed. It's not on any map. It's never been on a map. The people who call themselves Palestinians, Israel has always had the ability to wipe them off the face of the earth at any moment. The United States right now have 2 aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean. If we wanted to, we could wipe out all of Gaza in a day. All of the Israeli military right now in a day could wipe out all of Gaza if they wanted to. If they were trying to commit a genocide, it would have already happened. By the time the world would have been reacting, they would be gone. That is a fact. So to say, oh, they're committing genocide is a blatant lie, because if they were, there wouldn't be any Palestinian people. It's not that hard. We're talking about wiping out Rhode Island, not Texas, not the United States. The magnitudes are immense. So let's get that straight. There is no genocide coming from Israel against Palestine. Israel has been more than willing to live with all the Arab nations around them and the Palestinian people, but it is Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and several Arab states that have said they can't live with Israel. You can't have let's get rid of this two-state solution. You can't have two states if one of them says the other one has to disappear. And only Hamas is saying that about Israel, not Israel saying that about Hamas.
Okay, well, here's the thing: is over the years, first off, the area in question, and we've talked about this on other episodes, the area in question has been predominantly settled by Israeli people. Okay, even prior to them being called Israeli. Okay, it was occupied by the Jewish people.
The Hebrews, going back in history, Hebrews.
Okay, so throughout biblical times, this was the quote unquote promised land for the Jewish people. And this is where they settled directly after their slavery was eliminated by Egypt. Okay, when they were released from their bounds of slavery to the country Egypt. This is where they went. Since that time, Arab nations have sought to get Israel out of that area because it is one of the more fertile areas in the region.
Yeah, lots of resources. Every type of resource you could want.
Okay. That being said, the Ottomans, which is primarily Arabs, when they were defeated during World War II, the English came in and set aside this land for Israel. And some of it was set aside for a Palestinian state. Except, like we've said on this numerous times, there really is no Palestine. Palestine is a conglomeration of Arab-speaking people that have basically been thrown out of their originating countries. Egypt, Jordan, Iran, the Saudi Arabia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
To be accurate, they are the leftover tribes, Arab tribes, that were driven out of every other homeland that they had.
Right.
Which is why they're not accepted today by any of the Arab nations.
Okay. Now, from that, we end up with multiple terrorist organizations, namely the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, which was responsible for the Munich bombing and the Munich hostage situation during the 1972 Munich Olympics.
Terrorism in the 70s.
Okay, and it was outright terrorism.
Yeah.
Okay. Palestinians were ecstatic about it, bragged about it all over the world. And that was one of the first real terrorist acts that was noted as actual terrorism.
Yeah, it stood out for the world for the point of genocide for the purpose of genocide.
And since then, the Palestinians, namely their various terrorist organizations that have spawned out of Palestine, have continuously assaulted the Israel nation, which was actually established as a sovereign nation in 1947 at the end of World War II. Okay, when Israel declared its independence. Palestine didn't declare its independence till much, much later.
Well,
And that's another thing.
because Palestine doesn't exist, and realistically, it's not a nation. And more importantly, see, let's zip forward in time. The Palestinian people get more respect and are treated better by Israel than Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, any of the Arab nations that surround them. They get more support, they get more better treatment, they have more rights. Then if you're Palestinian in Egypt, you don't have the same amount of rights or freedoms as you do as in the West Bank or in Gaza. That's a fact. Again, none of this, if we look at the actual facts on the ground and the history, not to say that Israel is perfect, not to say they have a perfect government, not to say that there couldn't be improvements. You can say that about any nation, any group of people, anywhere at any time. But to look at the reality of what's happening right now, there is no one who treats the Palestinians better than the Israelis, even as the Palestinians, through the support of Iran, the global leader of terror, a nation that poisons its own schoolgirls for daring to learn to read, that is a fact. This is why they continue to attack Israel, and Israel continues to allow them to exist. Think about that. Could you imagine having your neighbor every day of your life proclaim to you every day, every time they see you, that they're going to kill you, and and every so often they try to burn down your house, and you do nothing but rebuild your house and continue to live there? Because that's the reality. If we're to put it into context, that's the reality of what's going on in the Middle East right now. But I don't even care about the past. We know there are 242 hostages, human shields, individuals who have been tortured, sexually abused. We're talking about women. We're talking about children. Many of them medically in danger of losing their lives because of such poor medical treatment from Hamas, who captured them, who kidnapped them after beating them and killing their friends and neighbors, civilians. These human shields, at least 242 of them, an unknown number of them being Americans, at least 22 of them. The media doesn't want to talk about that. They dropped that number out completely. They don't like to talk about this. 22 Americans on top of the 33 that were killed, 22 that are being captured. They're hostages right now, human shields to protect Hamas because they're cowards. And we finally got a ceasefire, and some of them are being released. That's the good news of the day. Bad news? None of them are Americans so far. Why isn't the media talking about that?
They're not going to. Okay, because everything right now on that side is pro-Palestine. Okay, throughout this history, Israel has numerous times given up land in this area in an effort to try to bring about peace. And no matter what they have tried, no matter what they've done, Hamas, the PLO, and other organizations, pro-Palestinian organizations, have basically rejected any plans. And for the most part, Israel just wants to be left alone. They want to be left in their territory. When this territory was established in 1947, it was established by basically the Jews that were part of the Holocaust.
The survivors of the Holocaust.
Right. Survivors of the Holocaust. And they were heading to the Promised Land, as foretold in both the Torah and the Bible. British ships blocked the convoy, turned it back, and sent it back to Europe. It was only after the UN stepped in and multiple European countries basically cried foul that the British backed down and set aside 46.7% of the land that was quote unquote known as Palestine for the Israelis. Okay, or the Jewish people. The remainder was to be left as an quote unquote an Arab state, not Palestine, an Arab state.
By the way, just to let you know real quick, it looks like YouTube is trying to censor us very heavily. I just tried to leave a comment because Dal had left us a comment. I tried to respond to it, and YouTube seems to be denying me the ability to leave a comment.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yep, still won't let me comment. So they're either blocking it completely or they're heavily suppressing it.
Right. And that doesn't surprise me, honestly, because people don't want the truth about this to get out. They really don't. They want their narratives to get out because they want to make Israel look like the bad guys here. Except Israel didn't do anything until after it was attacked on October 7th.
They want to eliminate anyone who is talking about this situation with any honesty. And again, the news came out today. When I'm talking about the hostages, this is news we have known since October 7th. Mm-hmm. This is breaking news that came out today. Joe Biden had a press conference talking about this for 10 minutes today, as covered by C-SPAN. These are facts on the ground. Whether or not the pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas movement likes it or not, whether the progressives like it or not, nothing that we have said is factually incorrect. Not one statement. Everything is historically verified and credible. Just want people to know that as they are suppressing your ability to comment, your free speech, it's only because they don't like the truth, because this is the truth. Whether you like it or not doesn't matter. It's the truth. Very upset about this. I'm very upset that they are actively suppressing us right now. Yeah, I still can't make a comment. This is crazy.
Yeah, it is. Okay, and we got some other things that we need to talk about during this as well, because there was a terrorist attack or a potential terrorist attack in the state of New York. A car bomb went off at one of the border crossings.
Yeah, I saw that the
Rainbow Bridge.
Yeah, the state police had said that the last thing I saw about it yesterday was that they had said they didn't think it was a terrorist action. Did you hear an update about it beyond that?
Well, if it wasn't a terrorist action, then why was it a car bomb?
Hey, I'm not telling you that you're wrong. I'm saying that's the last thing I heard them say about it. I didn't hear about a further update.
Okay. I haven't heard any other updates. I heard about it basically the day that it happened and haven't heard a lot more about it.
Well, it's not a surprise to me that we often see news that can be very questionable. Think about when we heard about the Fort Hood shooter. Well, that wasn't terrorism until we found out, well, yes, it was. The Colorado shooting wasn't about terrorism until we found out, yes, it was. Yeah. San Bernardino wasn't about terrorism until we found out, yes, it was. They like to frame these things in a very specific way to make us think, well, no, it's got to be the neo-Nazis. It's got to be the right wing. And then we find out, no, it's not. The Wakusha the driver who attacked an entire parade of people celebrating Thanksgiving and Christmas. Well, that's just a wild guy. No, he's a black supremacist, and he's a progressive who was trying to live up to the black supremacy ideology. That's why he did it. We have a lot of cases of this. The autonomous zone in Atlanta, where they are currently, where they would actually earlier this week, they were trying to burn down Atlanta again. They did it in January. They did it again this week, trying to burn down 12 different construction trucks and trying to, again, impede Cop City. They're burning down Atlanta again. This is the same autonomous zone. It's the same group of Antifa who are terrorists. And, but we can't talk about that. That's not really important. You got to watch out for those right-wingers who historically don't cause problems, don't get arrested at their protests. It's amazing. And, we get 4,000, 40,000. Go ahead.
Here is the narrative that they're trying to put out. Okay, there's video footage of this, and I'll actually pull up the video footage here in just a second on this. But what they are claiming is that it could have been a mechanical failure on an older model Bentley that caused it to rapidly accelerate. It says dramatic footage captures the vehicle speeding up before it hit a curb on the U.S. side of the border and became airborne and then combusted, killing the pair inside.
Yes, because Bentleys are known for exploding.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul and FBI officials later said there was no sign of terrorist activity. And I'm going to bring that into question here pretty quick.
Well, let's start with,
there has been signs here in New York.
Well, that's true, but also let's consider, when was the last time you have ever heard of a Bentley, any German or American car, spontaneously exploding? Even when NBC, remember it was NBC, they were trying to tell everyone about that one Ford truck and saying it explodes. I think it was the Pinto or something. And they said, it could just explode if it gets into a car accident. And that was fake, that they had to rig the car to explode. And you're telling me that a modern being in the last 50 years, a modern day Bentley just exploded? Doesn't happen. Modern cars built outside of the Soviet Union, built outside of Cuba or China, don't randomly explode. It just doesn't happen. Just science. It's just pure science and physics. It doesn't happen.
Well, here is the thing and I'm trying to find the actual thing on it, but about a week before this happened, and actually I'm finding out there's been a lot more than just this one that I heard about. There was an IED found in a roadside ditch, not too far from where this happened. Okay. Let's see.
I'm not surprised. New
York. On November 12th, a Horseheads man was charged after potential explosives were found.
Yeah.
And that's in Chemung County. And I guess they found a whole lot of explosives at that.
Chemung County.
Yeah. And I think that was actually related to this incident that I was talking about, where that IED was found.
No,
Um,
as I remember that story, because I was living out in that area, there was no direct link found to it, but suspicions, a lot of suspicions. Look, if you're in New York State, you better get used to it. We are we have a state where both New York City, one of the largest cities in the world, and the governor, so Eric Adams and Kathy Hochul, have been supporting sanctuary status, that they do not believe in supporting the law of the land, legal immigration. They have an open border policy, and we have been flooded with over 100,000 illegal aliens that we know of from everywhere in the world. And most recently, a large slew of people coming from Venezuela, Angola, and China, as well as many people from the Middle East that have not been vetted and have entered into this state and been spread around. Literally, right now, illegal aliens are getting bus tickets to anywhere in the world they want to go, or tickets, train and plane and bus tickets to go anywhere in the world that they want to go one way from New York City, because they can't afford the illegal aliens we have, even as we get more. So they're being shipped out all over the place. And we're wondering, gee, could the threat be higher? Of course. There's 169 known terrorists that have entered the United States, according to Secretary Mayorkas of the DHS, Department of Homeland Security. We know there are terrorists that have been entering the United States through these open borders. One of the biggest open borders is New York State. This isn't surprising.
it is. Yeah, it is. And
yes, I know Dal. Yes, I know Bentley is a British car manufacturer, but I'm just saying they have the same standards as Germany, as Europe, as the United States. Those cars don't blow up. You have to go back to the Soviet bloc to get cars that just randomly combust. We'll go on.
Let's see. That happened on Wednesday. So today. Okay, because supposedly this couple was going to see a Kiss concert.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm trying to figure out where Kiss was having a concert on that date, which would have been the 22nd. So if they're going to a Kiss concert on Wednesday, they would have been going to Toronto, Ontario.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to put some things together here. So, bear with me.
I'm just, as you're looking at that, it just seems less than credible. Again, how often do we hear about cars randomly exploding? We don't. Not if they have been made by a first or second world nation in the last 50 years. So their credibility in saying this couldn't possibly be anything but an accident is suspicious. Now, I'm not saying that it can't be true, but I'm saying it doesn't ring as credible, especially when we know that we have 169 known terrorists running around in America right now. That's the ones we know of. An unknown number of them have come in. We know in the last 3 years under the Biden administration, 8 million illegal aliens that we know of have entered the United States, that there are over 140,000 illegal aliens that entered into and are in New York City right this second, and more are coming because Kathy Hochul, Eric Adams, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the squad, they're not closing the borders. It doesn't matter that we're seeing Boston and Chicago and New York, the state of California, they're all going bankrupt trying to support these illegal aliens and all of the problems that come with them. And they're still keeping the doors open and saying, come on in, even though they can't take care of the ones that they already invited in. And to say that, okay, these people who did not come to America to assimilate, they didn't come to America to become Americans, to become part of what we envision as America. No, they came to be wherever they're from, people from wherever here in America. They're, as an example, Angolans or Chinese or from the Middle East in America, not Americans. There's a big difference between the two. And that difference doesn't allow them to assimilate, to mix with other people that have different ideas and different ideologies. This is why we're seeing, one of the reasons why we're seeing a ramp up in violence is the fact that they're not assimilating with everyone else. They're not integrating into American society. They're importing their society into America. A very big difference. As Joanna would say, this raises a bunch of red flags. It is something to consider.
Okay, because I'm going to pull up something here because, like I said, they were supposedly going to a Kiss concert that was being held in Toronto.
Yeah.
Okay. So the pin that I've got dropped up here is the Scotia Bank Arena in Toronto. Clear down here at Buffalo is where that happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Which, granted, that would probably been the best and only bridge, with the exception of the Lewiston Queenston Bridge, depending on where they were coming from. To go to Toronto. Okay, and like I said, depending on where they're coming from, and I haven't heard where exactly these people are from.
Grand Island.
So Grand Island, New York?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not real sure where Grand Island is.
Well, I think I'm not as concerned about how they're getting there. Again, my overriding concern is the red flags that appear to be raised are part of a larger problem. The problem being that we have lost control of our borders. We have lost control of the people who are entering our country. The people that, at least some of the people who are coming into our country aren't here to assimilate. They aren't here to become part of what America is. In fact, they're coming to transform America, much like the Democratic Socialists of America are looking to transform America into something else. And that creates friction. And that friction is raising the danger level for everyone. That's my concern. Regardless of where they came from, how, and this is, if this wasn't an act of terror, I'm going to go with, okay, let's assume that Hocho's telling the truth. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm learning some of this stuff as on the fly. Okay. The Kiss concert in Toronto had actually been canceled. And this couple supposedly went to Seneca Niagara Resort and Casino before they made this trip to the U.S.-Canada border crossing.
Right.
If the concert had been canceled, and if I'm not mistaken, the Seneca Niagara Resort is in New York. Why were they going back into Canada when they are from New York?
No idea. Again, a question. There are many questions, and I would not be surprised that we will see somewhere down the road, kind of like what we've seen with um, the jab, what we have seen with um, Hunter Biden, what we have seen with many of these news stories, that what we are initially being told, and this is the truth, this is, don't worry, it's absolutely, we're sure. Anyone who says anything else is wrong. 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, 2 years later, we find out, the original story, the original theory, yeah, that was the truth. So they can, and that's the problem they've built in right now. How can I trust Hochul, who has lied to us before?
Oh, many times.
Right. And how can I trust Adams or the FBI or the Biden administration when they have all lied to us? There's 3 years. Russia collusion. It's a fact. It's absolute. Adam Schiff has the proof. He said so on Rachel Adam for 3 years in a row. 3 investigations later, there is no proof. And everything about that was a lie. Oh, here's the January 6th. Look, these people, look at all the violence that's going on. We get 40,000 hours of video watching the police escort people through the hallways as they're patting people on the back and sometimes taking the handcuffs off of unknown individuals for unknown reasons, throwing into question, well, was this huge violent terrorizing uprising, or was it something else? And there was a very, very small group of people who were doing bad things because they promised everyone was there to destroy the Capitol. And then when we get to actually see the video, no, that's really not the case. And even the people like the shaman that were told, oh, he's instigating. Really? Because when we get to see more video, what's he doing? He's calling for peace. He's calling for people to act calmly, to stay within the lines, to not destroy anything. So again, over and over again, we have multiple cases where we are told there is no problem. Bridgeport, Connecticut, we're told, oh, mail-in ballots are absolutely secure. There's no way. This is the most secure, perfect way to do an election. Bridgeport, Connecticut, we have video of the Board of Elections, a member, a Democrat, stuffing ballots and on the stand with the court saying that she has for 20 years not followed the law in Connecticut in the manner in which she counts the ballots and how she's instructed her crew to count the ballots. We have consistently in every aspect of our country, we have Janet Yellen telling us, don't worry, inflation's not a big deal. You just don't understand. Do you see that we brought down inflation? Except inflation is up versus 2019. It's up versus 2020, 2021. It's down from the peak of July 2022. Yes, it's up versus any other time period you want to look at. And it's real that right now, as you go to the store, things are more expensive. Inflation is up, not down. Your turkey costs more this year than last year. But Thanksgiving costs 5% less. Only if you don't count the turkey, yeah. If you're looking at what it cost in 2019, that's not true. If you ask what it cost in 2021, 2022, no, that's not true. Again, we keep getting these statements. You can trust us. It's absolutely fine.
Well,
and then we find the reality is not.
Here's some other stuff that I want to bring up. Okay. The incident occurred shortly before 12 p.m. Authorities say that the vehicle had attempted to cross the U.S. border into Canada using the Rainbow Bridge. when a Border Patrol officer directed the car into a secondary lane for searching. Well, first off, if it's going from the United States to Canada, Border Patrol is not going to be searching. It's going to be the Canadian Border Patrol. Okay. Our people don't search vehicles heading into Canada. They search vehicles coming back from Canada. So that is the first thing. When a Border Patrol officer directed the vehicle into a secondary lane for searching it, it sped up, went airborne over an 8-foot fence, and crashed, caught on fire, then exploded. There are some things that just are not making any sense on this, according to the narrative that they are trying to feed us.
Yeah, but again, that's my problem. This is why we see that the general public are at the all-time low of trust in news media. How many times have we seen NBC, New York Times, CNN, the major mainstream news media? How many times have we caught reporters making up a story or plagiarizing a story, changing key details of the story that we have seen? How many times the news media have come out, as I said before, months or years later and say, oh, the initial story, yeah, that was the truth. Everything, when we said that you're wrong and evil and dumb for not believing what we told you then, well, you were right. Oops. Sorry. Let's move on. We've seen it too many times in the last decade, where we are constantly being told, here's the information you should trust and believe in. And within the same decade, oh yeah, that's all wrong. How can we trust them? How can, especially when this doesn't make sense. Hearing about this car accident and the nature of it, it doesn't make sense. Why should I give them the benefit of doubt when every time it hasn't made sense in the past, it's turned out the story from the mainstream media, from many of the elected officials, is a lie or factually incorrect, however you want to word it. And that's a problem for the First Amendment. That's a problem for the security of the United States, not just our elections, but every aspect of our country. If we cannot trust the news, if we cannot trust our elected officials, we can't trust our law enforcement because we are consistently finding them to have lied and omitting key factors, how can we have a country? You know what I mean?
Well, that's just it. Okay. And like I said, they don't want to they don't want anybody challenging the quote unquote official narrative. And we haven't seen this level of weaponizing our government since the Alien and Sedition Act.
Right.
And I mean, it's to the point now, okay, where it's getting to the point where we are being so subversively censored that it is a complete disregard for the principles that our country was founded upon. And that's what eventually got rid of the Alien and Sedition Act, was the fact that it was against our founding principles.
Well, a lot of this is all against our founding principles. It's against our principles that we have Janet Yellen and the press secretary, Jean Pierre, and Joe Biden telling the American people, oh, the economy is doing fantastic. You just don't understand. We have 3.9% unemployment, and actually it's higher depending on how you want to count. It's at least double that. You're looking at Small business is shrinking. We're looking at taxes going higher. Things are more expensive. There is a global food shortage that is ongoing. We've been in a recession since August of 2022. The only reason why they don't call it a recession is because they changed the definition on us. We are being told that as we have less money available to pay our bills, don't worry, everything's great. The economy is doing fantastic. You just don't understand. This is going against the very principles of transparency of our government. We have Joe Biden, who's had 60,000 emails written under a false pseudonym that he doesn't want the public to see. We have found that he has received money. He told us never received money from his son's or family member's business. That's a lie. He's never received money from foreign governments. That's a lie. He was doing this as he was vice president, not while he was in elected office. He's had secret documentation that was illegal for him to have as a senator for 4 decades. Look at all the problems we have going on. It's only natural that we have. It's only natural to not have trust at this point.
Okay.
What?
Okay. I got to show you this. Because this is exactly what we're talking about. Biden wins. Over 13 million jobs added.
Factually a lie.
Jobs recovered.
Factually a lie.
Below 4% for the longest stretch in over 50 years. The only reason why that is because so many people left the workforce due to COVID lockdowns. Prevented default on national debt. No, you did not. That was not a Biden win. Expanded the NATO alliance. Again, not a Biden win.
Okay.
Rallied our allies in support of Ukraine.
No.
That's because you're trying to keep your corruption from getting out.
Well, no, he didn't even rally them. I mean, Germany didn't want to give any of their tanks. Poland is pissed at us right now. The United Kingdom doesn't want to be involved in this. No one's rallied to this. But go on, because that's actually incorrect.
The biggest reason why Biden is so obsessed with Ukraine and why a lot of Democrats are obsessed with Ukraine is because if it comes out, the amount of corruption that Biden's and members of his family have and other members of the Democratic Party have in Ukraine, it would destroy the Democratic Party. Cap the cost of an insulin at $35 a month for seniors on Medicare.
Trump already did that. Then he rescinded and redid it. That's not a Biden win.
Once in a generation infrastructure investments. The majority of the money that was supposed to go to infrastructure, we are finding out hasn't gone to infrastructure.
Well, actually, it was only, that's the Inflation Reduction Act. And if we look at the bill,
the Infrastructure Act, the one before the Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay. The Build Back Better. In both cases, they spent $100 billion on infrastructure and $1 trillion on everything else. So no, actually, they didn't increase infrastructure spending. The title of the act says infrastructure. The actual bill, if you read it, doesn't spend anything more than we already have been spending, about $100 billion on infrastructure. It's a lie. That's a lie. Factually, a lie.
Issued executive orders to safeguard access to reproductive health care. Confirmation of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Diversity hire, not the best person.
No.
By definition, she was a diversity hire because the requirements set up by Joe Biden himself were it must be a Black woman, who happened to be a justice that had to be hired. They wanted to make sure that she was also a Democrat and that she was young. And when we start whittling into those kind of criteria, the number of people, there were exactly 11 women that were even possible to fit the categories that Joe Biden had set up. Only 11. Of those 11, only 3 were in the right age range to be able to be selected. And they picked Ketanji. It wasn't because she's the best. She's the only one who filled in all the check boxes. In fact, every other member, the other 10 women that potentially could have filled the position, every single one of them have more experience and had less of their cases overturned by a superior court. Ketanji was the worst, the very worst.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like you said, it was a diversity hire. It was to, quote unquote, make him look good. And the thing is, the popularity of Biden and the Democratic Party is dramatically falling with people of color.
Be right back. Keep going.
Okay. All across the board, the Democrats are showing their true faces. And basically, what it amounts to is they want to control everything. And they try to claim that conservatives and Republicans are fascists and so forth. But if you look at the trademarks of fascism, you look at the trademarks of communism, you look at the trademarks of authoritarian regimes, we see this all coming from the current administration. We see censorship under the guise of preventing quote unquote misinformation. We see the weaponization of governmental agencies against the opponents of the current administration. We see all kinds of, we see a huge propaganda war against quote unquote MAGA Republicans. We are seeing what was pretty much a peaceful protest during the counting of the votes being cited as an insurrection, yet we see what was more of an insurrection during the riots that happened shortly after George Floyd, which were actual insurrectionist activity.
When we talk about insurrections, remember, every single autonomous zone, every single one of them are acts of insurrection. They violate every local, state, and federal law in existence.
But not only that, let's look at this as a whole, not just the autonomous zones. Okay, we had federal buildings across the country being assaulted with fire bombs, rocks, Molotov cocktails, and various other weapons across the country by rioters. That is insurrection. We had the storming of the White House during those protests. That is an insurrection.
And since
now these are
a week ago,
extremely violent acts. They literally make January 6th look like these people were just out for a tourist stroll. And that's literally what a lot of it was. Yeah, glasses broke because these people were literally being tear gassed and rubber bullets being shot at them. They were being taunted and agitated. Okay. But when they got in, really, they did not do a lot of damage once they got inside of the Capitol. And they are trying to claim that they did. They are trying to claim that a lot of the incidents that happened resulted in injuries and stuff. Most of the injuries that happened to Capitol Police, they have found out, were actually stuff that they did to themselves,
Well, many of them
or they
committed
were
suicide.
underlying health conditions.
Many of them. Well, you can't attribute a stroke to what happened there. Suicide, not responsible for that event. It's again, they like to. The only people who died during January 6th were the people who were killed by Capitol police officers.
Right.
We've seen this. They were beaten down by the police officers. They were shot by the police officers. They were dropped off of the steps by police officers, Capitol police officer. We know this. We have the video. We've had the witnesses. But, the news media doesn't like to talk about that in the same way they don't like to talk about the American hostages that are currently being held by Hamas, in the same way that they don't want to talk about the impact of illegal immigration on cities across America, even in the bluest of blue cities, the way they don't want to talk about inflation and the economy, which refute every claim made about Bidenomics. And all of this is because they're trying to fortify elections and maintain their choices in power. It's kind of sad.
Mm-hmm. It is. Okay. And like I was saying when you left, we get called fascists. We get called all this other stuff. And we've talked about this on here many times before. The ones that are looking the most authoritarian at this moment are members of the current Democrat administration. They're the ones that are trying to silence any opposing voices, whether it be voices in opposition of vaccines, whether it be voices in opposition of the January 6th narrative, whether it be voices that are actually trying to call out the true insurrectionist activities that took place during the riots after George Floyd, and various other things. Those are the voices they're trying. Any voice that is in opposition to this current administration are the ones that they're trying to silence.
Any voice that is.
They are also weaponizing the federal government against anyone that opposes them. And that is the exact tactics that all authoritarian regimes have used throughout history.
Well, we saw that start. Well, we saw elements of that under the Obama administration with the Lois Lerner and the IRS as they targeted Republican and conservative
and
businesses.
They also bugged the campaign headquarters for Trump.
That's the FBI. The FBI did, in fact, had bugs and spies that were in the Trump administration and his campaign for no apparent reason. He didn't break any laws. And again, the investigations into Russia collusion had already ended and proven that he was fine. So we know these things did exist.
And then we have mainstream media literally admitting that it manipulated the 2020 election.
Fortified. That's what they called it. According to Newsweek, the shadow cabal of news, as reported by Newsweek, the shadow cabal fortified. That's their word for it. They fortified the election, and that's what they're doing right now. The White House is working. We know this for a fact. It has been admitted to already. It's been covered by the mainstream news media that the White House is working with social media and the mainstream to disseminate approved messages and to identify misinformation, disinformation, in other words, information that Joe Biden and his campaign don't like that might cause people to not vote Democrat in 2024. And they are silencing those people. That includes this channel. That includes everyone who's probably watching this. It is everyone who doesn't have the proper social credit score.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And we see this stuff going on. And if you're watching this and you are a liberal leaning viewpoint, this should trouble you as much as it troubles us.
Probably more.
Point blank. Because what one side can do when they are in power, the other side can do when they are in power. And often what ends up happening is they escalate. And it keeps going back and forth. And that's what we are seeing happening in our governments right now. Okay. Once one side gets away with doing something, the other side decides it's going to do it and then one up it. And this should be absolutely terrifying for all Americans, because we are no longer a government of we the people. We are a government of oligarchs.
Well,
okay, and we have oligarchs on two different sides opposing each other, and they don't listen to what we the people say.
That would be the establishment, the same people who are doing. I've been covering a lot about RFK, not because I think he's the best choice, but RFK is a credible candidate for the presidency. He's an independent at this moment. He was a Democrat. He has a lot of progressive ideology, but they've blacklisted him. There's no reason for it. But you had news about him running when he was a Democrat. The second he said, I'm an independent and I'm running, you stopped hearing about him. They stopped covering him. Not that he went down in the polls. He's getting 22%. You just can't find. I was at an event in New York City, 1 block from Baruch College. And even though Reuters was there, they sent a reporter, no camera. He had only a couple of interviews and then left. But you didn't hear about that. No one in the mainstream heard about that. No one in local New York State heard about that, unless you saw my coverage of it or there was one or two other independent alternatives. We know that local news media is dying on the vine right now because conglomerates own most of the news stations, and they don't want to talk about local news. They're just telling you what to. More and more, we're seeing the news media just tell you, here's the story I want you to pay attention to, and this is how you should feel about it. I mean, just again, look at the coverage.
And that's on both sides. It's not one side or the other. We got Fox doing it, their versions of it. We got MSNBC, CNN, and the others doing their side of it. Okay. And honestly, the only real places that you can turn to that you can actually even hope for a somewhat neutral perspective is through independent news or independent journalists.
No. Be careful. Be careful with that, because I just did I was researching this and I did a little bit of an expose. What you're seeing now is there are companies like Midas Touch Network, MTN, who are quote unquote the fastest growing independent news on YouTube. And they are promoted by YouTube. They are verified according to YouTube. Here's the thing that this independent news channel, that 9 years ago, they had 3 videos. 7 years ago, they had 5 videos. Then 3 years ago, they suddenly came in, got 10,000 subscribers, and suddenly were getting about 40,000 views per video that they did out of the blue. They also happened to get donations in the number in like 200,000 from Bette Midler. This independent news station that now has 1.7 million subscribers is a super PAC. They leave that out. Whether you go to their website or you go to YouTube, they do not mention they're a super PAC. They're a political action committee. They're not independent. They're not even news. They are a political action. They are literally a political organization trying to drive people to vote in a certain way. But yet they are called, quote, independent news and promoted by YouTube.
I actually goofed up. I meant to say citizen journalists.
That I agree with. Yes.
That's not independent. Citizen journalists.
Yeah, but notice that's the way they play this game.
You have to be very, very careful about who you're listening to there. Okay. Some of them are truly neutral. And they try to bring out the story as it is. Okay. They try to present just the facts. And then you've got a lot of them that will spin one way or another. So you have to be very careful.
Or that they lie. I mean, here's my thing against the Midas Touch Network isn't that they exist. Fantastic. I don't care that they're best known for trolling other politicians. I don't care about that. You want to promote your ideology. You want to push out personal attacks as if that were political commentary. Fantastic. You get an audience for that. I'm happy for you because First Amendment, free speech, you get to do that. I don't care. The thing that upsets me is this is built upon a lie. They are a political action committee, not individuals, not a news organization. They have a very clear declared agenda that they're hiding from the public. The very same public they're saying, look, we're being transparent. We want you to know what's going on. Except they're starting it off with a lie. And they're being supported in that lie. YouTube verified them for being independent news when they are a super PAC, not the same thing. That's the thing that people should be aware of. That's the kind of lie that's being pushed onto us right now. You can see why I'm upset about that, right? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah. And honestly, it is getting to the point where you have to do your own research. And we've touted that before on this show. Okay. And we honestly do not want you to take our word for it. We will lead you to a certain extent, but we want you to go out there and verify this information that we present to you on your own. And we also challenge you to challenge us on our positions and what we say on here. Plain and simple. I mean, Mike and I challenge each other back and forth constantly. Okay, because we see things from different perspectives. And that's the only way we can actually get at the truth is by challenging each other. Probably
twice as long as the show may be, we do twice as much off the air.
Oh yeah. It's impossible for any person to actually be able to know everything there is that we need to know. So we have to be challenged. We have to challenge each other on various things. Plain and simple, it keeps us honest.
Yeah. Well, think about it.
It helps keep us looking towards what is the truth instead of our biases getting us to a point where we no longer see what's really happening. We only see what our bias allows us to see. And that's not good for anybody.
You know, I had a gentleman one time. I've been covering red flag laws since 2018. And for a long time, up until this year, I was only aware of, there were no reports, no studies that had ever been done that had ever shown red flag laws being effective at reducing suicides or mass shootings. And it was only until this year, for the first time, and I presented this to New York State, I've gone through it since 2018. This year, there is one study that says there might be a 4% impact on suicides from red flag laws. Only one study in the last, since 1999. There's only one study that says that might have a 4% impact. And I only found that out because one of the viewers said, "Hey, Mike, no, I did find one study. There's only one. It's the one I didn't, that came out in 2020, and I missed it. But that's the only one."
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But here's my point is, I like being challenged because I can't know everything. When I just told you about Midas Touch, which I did a lot of research on independently. I did a video. I have links to their super PAC from opensecrets.org. I've looked and tracked down information about many of the people in there. I have links to it all in the video. I only found out about that because, again, another viewer contacted me and said, "Hey, Mike, can you check this out? Look into this because something doesn't make sense there." I had another guy told me about HR 771 and asked me to look into that because it looked like a horrible bill. Looked into it. I did a video about it. We rely on you to double check us. We can't know everything, can't find everything.
No, we can't. We honestly can't, and we do rely on you guys as much as we do our own information. And we need to be challenged on our positions and stuff. Because like I said, okay, number one, we can't know it. We absolutely can't know everything. Number two, it keeps us honest. It helps us from being blinded by our own biases. And I don't care who you are, you have a bias. You have a bias based upon what your history is. Okay. Plain and simple, you do. And if you try to claim that you are unbiased, I'm going to flat out call you a liar. Now we try not to let our biases enter the picture too often, but it does. And I know I have a bias that our government is drastically exceeding its authority. And I will see things that are happening that lend credence to my bias, for lack of a better way of putting it. But that doesn't mean that everything that I'm biased with is necessarily right or accurate. I try to ground everything that I say based upon my understanding of the Constitution. And that understanding comes from a lot of historical research, a lot of research into the actual founding of this country, the research into the actual writing of the Constitution, and the ratification of the Constitution. It's not just based upon what the Constitution says. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I looked to try to find out what the intent of the various phrases in the Constitution were when they were pen to paper. Okay. And when they were ratified. Because what the actual intention was when it was framed doesn't mean that's the intention of what was ratified. And we do see in the historical record that what was ratified has different intentions than what was actually written in the Constitution. And we have to look at that when we are trying to study the Constitution and when we're trying to make sense of what was intended.
Well, think of it this way. When people think about this, so we have, I'll use an example that's current in everyone's mind. Eric Adams
Mm-hmm.
and First Amendment. So Eric Adams was elected. He's the practical progressive, as he stated on CNBC the day after he won the New York mayoral race. And he was lauded. He was the darling of Democrats and progressives in New York State and across the country. He lost that status as a darling because he said New York City cannot support the number of illegal aliens that it has. He didn't say close the border. He didn't say stop sending in illegal aliens. He said he needs more money, give us more tax money. But because he said that, we have seen that he has now been investigated by the FBI for money laundering. If this existed, where were the news media doing their job during his campaign, finding that? Or since his election, why didn't they find it? Okay. He's also now been charged as of today. He's been charged with sex assault charges from 1993, 10 years ago. For a decade, someone has waited 10 years, not during his election, not immediately after his election, but only after he has complained about illegal aliens. The FBI investigated him. Democrats said, shut up. And now he suddenly gets sexual assault charges 10 years after the fact. Does that feel like the government is supporting free speech and supporting the news media? Or does it sound like this is a targeted hit job meant to tell every other politician, every single Democrat, and you and me, don't you dare say something that is out of line or else?
Right.
Which violates the First Amendment.
That's it exactly. Okay. And we are seeing this across the board. If you don't comply with your quote unquote party mandates, you are literally shunned. And I know I brought this up, and all of you know I do not believe in the two-party system. I think that the two-party system is one of the things that is rapidly destroying our country. Mike doesn't always agree with me on that,
but then
I do.
You and Larry Sharp have a slightly different opinion about this than I do. But go on, I'm with you.
But I do believe that is because it is about impossible to run for office unless you belong to one of the two major parties. It is about impossible to get anything done that isn't in accordance with the party agendas, regardless of whether that is a Republican agenda or a Democrat agenda. If you challenge the party agenda, then you are basically thrown under the bus for challenging that party agenda. And again, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, whether you're Republican or whether you're a Democrat. Some parties are worse than others. Don't get me wrong on that, because they are. Some parties are more authoritarian than others, but
yeah,
it still comes down to the fact that if you challenge the party's position, you soon find yourself outside of the party.
Talk to Joe Manchin, Christian Cinema. There's now, again, Eric Adams. Talk to the people who used to be in the Democratic Party. Again, I'm particularly focused on Democrats, but Eric Johnson, the mayor of Dallas, uh, Georgia State Representative Maynor. There's a few of them. Ask them; they'll tell you that we're right about that.
And we see the same thing happen in the Republicans.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen with Republicans. I have my own bias. I admit that freely on a regular basis. But they're just examples that come to the top of my head.
Right. So that's one of the reasons why I do believe that this two-party system is going to be ultimately the downfall of our country. I believe we need to have many more voices challenging what's going on. Honestly, I also believe that if we start getting more voices out there, that we can actually stop a lot of the veering away from our founding principles.
Well, here's my thing. If we don't start voting and holding our elected officials accountable and electing people because they're efficient and effective, if we keep going down this road of just establishment of party line politics, of demonizing everyone on the other side just because they're on the other side, if we keep going down that path, then we're going to see it's going to be more than just Afghanistan, Ukraine, Sudan, and now Israel, where Americans have been abandoned. 30,000 Americans, about 10,000 per year. That's going to grow. We're going to see more wasteful spending. We're $35 trillion in debt. That's because that's what the ceiling is in spending as of January 2025, 35 trillion. We're going to spend that. Guaranteed. And then we're going to raise the debt ceiling even higher. And we're going to lose our AAA rating and become AA rated, which means everything in America is going to become more expensive. The poor are going to be more poor. The problem with both of those situations is we need effective and efficient elected officials, and we don't have that because people are going, I'm just voting down the line.
Too many people, number one, vote down the party line. Too many people don't educate themselves on the people that they are actually voting for. Too many people don't want to be involved, and about the only involvement they want to have with anything political is going to the ballot box once every other year. And then there's a vast majority of people that don't even want that. They don't want to be involved at all. And they don't understand that politics affects everyone.
All the time.
You can claim all you want that you don't do politics. And guess what? Politics does you
on a regular basis.
Hey. So it's your choice. You can choose to govern yourselves, or you can choose to be governed by somebody else. As simple as that.
No, the rest of the world is paying attention. Think about it. After Afghanistan, the rout of America in Afghanistan, running away at full speed. We saw the Taliban rise up. We saw the resurgence of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And that has led to, over time, that led to Americans being held hostage and human shields by Hamas today. Hamas would never have done that if they didn't think America, that Joe Biden would capitulate and would run away when faced with a problem. And we elected, or it would seem that we have elected Joe Biden. He was fortified. We had a secret cabal working to ensure and guarantee that he would be elected. And this is the result of that. Not because he was the most effective or the most efficient. We see that. Look at the policies. Look at the state of America. Look at whether or not you're better off today than 4 years ago. The fact is, We have a less efficient, less effective, weak leader, and the world is reacting to that. And your life is more in danger today than it was 4 years ago. What happens in
And
the next 4 years?
if you believe for 1 second that foreign powers didn't help orchestrate Joe Biden being elected, then you are being utterly naive.
Well, to be fair, every country and every major power are involved in American politics, like America is involved in the politics of every other nation in the world. That's normal. That happens in every country, every year, in every election. There's always influence peddling both sides. So to say, oh, well, it didn't happen at all. Of course it did.
It
Is
did.
that what changed the election? No. No, it's not credible. It's not realistic. Russia didn't influence any election in America ever. Not enough to change the election.
No.
That's not a reality. Ask me about Google. In 2000, look at the 2015 article, which was covered by Politico, on whether or not Google could influence the 2016 election. That is something that we should talk about. We can't anymore, but look at that article.
Yeah. Well, look at Google, look at Facebook, look at
Mhm.
YouTube, look at Twitter. Okay. Actually, that was one of the big reasons why Musk bought Twitter, was to keep it from influencing elections.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And that is one of the biggest outcries from Democrats, is that Twitter is allowing conservative voices back.
Yeah, they broke the
be
echo
heard.
chamber, which is a good thing. Isn't that what we're supposed to do in America? That we're
Okay.
not supposed to have an echo chamber? That we're
Well,
supposed to have these conversations?
and that's the thing, is that's what social media was supposed to be for, was to be the sharing of ideas, regardless of whether or not they complied with our ideals or not. We always had the choice to not listen to things we didn't agree with. Okay, that is a fundamental principle of freedom. Is the choice of being able to listen to what you want and to not listen to what you don't want to hear.
And today, we now have companies like YouTube that have spent millions of dollars and changed their entire platform. And they've said this came out from The Verge 3 weeks ago. YouTube is actively pushing into your feed, into your viewing channels they have approved of. Whether you want the news or not, whether you want that particular type of news or not, they're pushing it into your news feed. They announced it publicly. The article's on The Verge 3 weeks ago. They're actively putting people like the Midas Touch Network, a super PAC, into your feed, whether you want it or not, because they want to see that result.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the world did they get the power to do that? And they tell you, oh, you can't do anything. If you try and stop them, if you complain about that, well, that's misinformation, disinformation, because the White House said so. So you're the problem. You're the bad guy, and you should be punished for saying, don't do that to me anymore. We need to pay attention to who we're electing and what they're doing in our name. We really do.
And here's one thing that's very telling. Prior to Musk, and that's one of the reasons why Musk let so many people go when he first took over Twitter. Prior to Musk, a majority of upper management in Twitter were former state intelligence operatives. And we're not talking just United States intelligence operatives. They were operatives from multiple countries that were in the upper echelons of Twitter. Okay, and they tried to make Musk look like this tyrant when he went in and started firing people left and right. And he was getting rid of literally these people that were literally silencing anything that ran against what they were trying to promote.
Well, think about it. He fired 75% of the entire company. And the company has never stopped doing what it was always doing. It's doing it as effectively before. The only difference between Twitter today and Twitter then is that it's no longer an echo chamber.
No.
That's what those 75%, 3 times as many people, 4 times as many people as they have today, some 7,500 people who were only there to make sure you couldn't speak about anything that didn't fit their political ideology, their feelings. Because that's what we always hear. You have to respect their feelings. You have to take on their feelings. Your feelings, meaningless. Their feelings, the most important thing in the universe, and you better have them too. Why? Because they said so. That's not the way it's supposed to work, not in America.
No, it's not. It really isn't. Okay. One of the biggest reasons why we have the First Amendment is the protection of ideas. Okay. Whether those be ideals of conscience, through the protection of the freedom of religion, whether they be other types of ideas, in opposition of our government. All that stuff is supposed to be protected under the First Amendment. Even to an extent, anything that is quote unquote classified as misinformation is protected under the First Amendment. There is no qualification under the First Amendment as to what is allowable speech. There is no qualification as to what freedom of the press is. There is no qualification as to freedom of assembly. There is no qualification for redress of grievances.
But the government would like you to believe today that unless you have a multi-million-dollar super PAC, you can't speak about politics. They want you to believe that unless you are a approved political organization, you can't go out and protest and hell, riot and try and burn down buildings. You can't do any of that. You can't peaceably go out and have a protest. No, you're not an approved group. You have to be like BLM or Antifa, the progressive leaders of tomorrow. You have to go out and try and burn down buildings. And if you have the right political ideology, that's okay. But if you're a bunch of people like Tea Party activists who came together, would literally have rallies and leave the areas they had the rally in cleaner than when they arrived. Never had a single person arrested at their rallies, and they were demonized. You don't believe me? Look back. Do the search on Google, on DuckDuckGo. Go and find it for yourself. You will not find a Tea Party rally where someone was arrested, but you can't not find a rally by Antifa, by BLM, by the progressive leaders of tomorrow, where they're not breaking the law and someone getting arrested. But one of those, the first one is demonized. The second one is lauded as being great. Something is wrong there, folks. And it's not the First Amendment. It's the application. Do you disagree with me, Mike?
No, I don't. I'm actually was trying to look up something here.
What? What you looking up?
Well, um,
You got to tell us, Mike. It's dead air if you're just like looking at it.
these pictures are what I'm looking up. I'll show you.
Okay. Trust me,
Okay.
folks.
They want to claim that January 6th was an insurrection. This is a picture from the George Floyd riots.
Is that the May 2020?
May 30th, 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a BLM riot in Washington, D.C. They tried to burn down, actually, they did burn down the church across the street from the White House and tried to burn down the White House too.
Right. Okay.
But you're not supposed to remember that, folks.
No. And you can see these people are running around in masks and headbands and all kinds of stuff. Okay. Smoke. This is more of an attack on our government than January 6th was. And mind you, I don't agree with everything that happened on January 6th. But what we saw during 2020, the riots of 2020, were a lot worse. And the media would try to claim that there is a false equivalency between the Black Lives Matter and the quote unquote Capitol siege that happened.
Billions of dollars in, as an example, in Minnesota and Minneapolis alone, $2 billion worth of damage. They destroyed entire swaths of Minneapolis that will not be replaced or fixed for decades. That was all BLM. That's okay. Downtown Manhattan, New York City, destroyed on a regular basis, going up and down Fifth Avenue and throughout the entire city, damaged and destroyed. 6,000 people were had their rioting and breaking and entering. Their charges were all dropped. 6,000 people, many of them on video. We knew their names. They got arrested for aggravated assault, for rioting, for disrupting the peace, for breaking and entering, for stealing. They got all of those charges dropped because BLM.
And this was an actual disruption of our government, not for a couple of hours, but for weeks.
You're still talking about BLM. I mean, you could be talking about what just happened last week with the DNC, where the pro-Hamas supporters tried to break into the DNC, where a bunch of senators were. All of Washington, D.C. got shut down. 300 people were arrested. This isn't like, we're not talking about, you're pointing out BLM and what was happening in 2020. It's happening today. And they just wave it off and say, well, that's okay. That happened. Yeah. The left, they went down to DC, shut down all of Washington, DC, shut down our government because they were pro-Hamas and they were angry at Democrats, their fellow Democrats, and that's okay. Don't talk about that. But the evil MAGA, oh my God, they're so bad. They're destroying our nation. Nothing's been shut down. Nothing's been stopped. No one's been, power transferred naturally. Oh, but they're evil. You're evil if you're MAGA, but they're trying to burn down DC last week. That's okay.
No, I'm actually looking for some additional photos of when they were actually in the Capitol building.
Well, that's the problem. That there's not an even distribution. Where's the playing field anymore? See, folks, this is why you have to vote. This is why you have to vote beyond party line. Where's the playing field? Because it's not even just left and right, two different. There's a playing field for Democrats and one for Republicans. There's one for progressives. There's one for the Democratic Socialists of America. There's one depending on your color of skin, your gender, your sexual ideology. They've got it broken down. This is equity in action. There's a different playing field for every single category in the equity list. That's crazy. Go ahead.
The picture I was talking about. Okay. And actually there are others that show even worse. Now, this is Newsweek. And how do they title this article?
Yeah. For those who are just listening in, no, the pro-Palestinian protest on Capitol Hill was not an insurrection. That's what the title of the article from Newsweek says. Meanwhile, they're showing protesters shutting down Washington, D.C. and disrupting our government from being able to continue its operations.
Okay. I mean,
which
here
is by
they
definition
are in
insurrection.
the middle of the Capitol building, the Capitol Rotunda. Okay. They were literally blocking entrance points and points of egress. Here you can see them being arrested. Okay. This was an outright insurrection.
By the definition, as both by its definition in Webster's, but also by the way that Democrats themselves define an insurrection. If we use the same rules with what they used for January 6th and apply it, and if we've done that to the George Floyd protests, we do that to what happened in Minneapolis, the autonomous zones across this nation. If you apply it to what happened in Washington, D.C., in the pro-Hamas, pro-terrorism protests, they all equal the same thing, insurrection. I'm using the definition the Democrats use. It's an insurrection.
Here is another picture. This shows actually better. Okay. Protesters of Israel-Hamas war enter congressional building, leading to more than 300 arrests.
And this is by Forbes.
Okay. And you can see right there, again, Capitol Rotunda. Okay. The protest at which people called on Joe Biden to use his leverage to implement a ceasefire and use any possible tool to force Israel to halt its war on Palestinians in Gaza was sponsored for Jewish Voice for Peace, and if not now, 2 Jewish American groups advocating for Palestinians. Okay. I don't think that they are true Jewish. I think they are front. Okay. And then right here, look at the smoke. Okay. Look at how they got literally the Capitol Rotunda building shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This was an insurrection. And if you want to say January 6th was an insurrection, that was as much of an insurrection as January 6th.
At the least. At the least. Again, if you play by the rules that they've put before us, well, it should be very straightforward. But the rules change. Depends on whether you're in favor with those in power, the establishment, or not. Have
And
you been?
That's where this truly is, where when we aren't applying the law equally, that is where we run into major issues with our country.
Yeah, but
we are a country that is, quote unquote, trying to push for equality. And we've discussed this, that there is no such thing as equality, true equality. There is equality of opportunity, and there is equality under the law. And the only thing that is guaranteed by the Constitution, and the only thing that was an intent of the Constitution, was for equality under the law. The Constitution doesn't guarantee any other equality.
Yeah, which for those who are having any trouble with that, that means that you don't get a lower bail just because of the color of your skin. You don't get a reduced or increased prison sentence because of the color of your skin, your gender, or your sexual preference. You don't have the charges of your crimes dropped or removed or suspended because of the color
you
of your
happen
skin.
to know the president.
Yeah,
or happen to be the son of the president.
That too, yeah. According to our principles, and that's the problem. We've lost our principles because we stopped paying attention to politics. The more you hear people say, "Oh, I don't follow politics. I don't pay attention." This is the reason why inflation is so high. This is why we're seeing Americans taken hostage across the world. This is why we are seeing our cities plagued with higher and higher crime and our infrastructure falling apart because of illegal aliens. It's because people are saying, I don't pay attention to politics. Because, okay, you're not involved. And at no point, doing nothing does not improve anything. If you do nothing, I guarantee you things will get worse because they always get worse.
Mm-hmm.
For the chemistry nerds out there, for the science nerds out there, delta zero is always greater. Excuse me. Delta is always equal to or greater than zero. Anyone who studies science, chemistry, physics, you know that's one of the key principles of life in the universe. Delta, for everyone else, means that chaos is always increasing. If you do nothing, that will create more chaos than if you actually do something. You make it worse by doing nothing.
You do. And the thing is we have literally become, as a country, so complacent in the usurpation of powers by the federal government that we are so used to it. And whenever the federal government says that they can do something, we take it as, well, they should know what they can do. No. And more often than not, the people that are claiming that they can do this, that, or the other really don't have a clue as to what the Constitution actually says and the powers that the Constitution actually grants them.
You know what that's like? It's like if you go walk up to someone and say, hey, can I park over there? And they say, sure. Are you sure? Do you know? No, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you can park there. Then you get a parking ticket. And they go, but you said, well, I thought you could.
Even though it's labeled plainly,
Yeah. Even though you see
no
a
parking.
sign says no parking. But, you said I could, so I did. Yeah. And when you think about that and go, well, that makes no sense. Why would you do that? Why are we doing it with our government?
We are. And that is because the vast majority of people in the United States have never even read the Constitution, let alone tried to understand what it actually says.
No.
They believe that you can only understand the Constitution if you are a constitutional lawyer or if you've been elected to office. And no, the Constitution was written in plain English so every person could understand it. That was the whole premise. The whole premise of the Constitution is we the people. And if the people couldn't understand the Constitution, how could they enforce it?
No, I mean, it wasn't created like laws are created today. Today, what was it? It was Clyburn, Representative Clyburn, and going over in 2010 was talking about the Obamacare and said, yeah, I'm going to pass it because who has you need 3 days and a team of lawyers to read a bill to understand what's in it. That's laws today. The Constitution, anyone, if you're, as long as you can read and you have a dictionary next to you, you can understand everything in it.
Well, and
Here's the difference.
You just brought up another very valid point. How are we as Americans supposed to follow the law if we can't understand the law?
The politicians don't understand the law. Literally. They've admitted that.
Yes. And that's my point exactly. Okay. If we can't understand the laws, and that's what's going on. And there is a famous line in Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand that says, what good is having a law if you can't arrest the people that you need to arrest?
Yeah, if the laws don't apply to everyone, and if no one knows who they apply to, you have anarchy. The same thing that I always say about illegal immigration. If the immigration laws don't apply everywhere in America, if New York says there's an open border and California says there's an open border, but the federal government says there aren't open borders, then there aren't open borders. There are open borders because if some of the states aren't listening, it doesn't matter. All the illegals are coming in through all the places that are open to them. Like when they welded open the gates in Arizona. You can tell me that Arizona says, no, but the border's closed. Yeah, but the gates welded open. The reality is that's an open border. You can tell me it's closed. The gates welded open. We have pictures. We're watching thousands of people walk through. It's an open border.
Interesting.
And that's anarchy. That's the example of anarchy. You lose all the laws. You can say, I have a law, but if no one's following it, it's not a law. And that means everything goes into that's corruption. That's the way I've always seen it.
Yeah.
What are you looking up, Mike? You got to talk to us. You're just typing.
Oh, just reported that there is an explosion at a Michigan oil refinery.
Yeah, I see that in Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. We don't have a whole lot of oil refineries. I would hope not. That would mean
refinery, BP oil refinery.
That would be a very expensive increase, especially now we're into the Christmas fourth quarter season.
Yeah.
That's going to spike energy prices. People may not realize that it's not just being able to get the oil, it's being able to refine it.
Well, that's it.
Huge.
And I'm not actually seeing anything right now online, but it may be too soon.
Yeah, but that would be a huge kick into the butt. You think the Bidenomics has failed? You think that inflation has gone up? One of the leading factors, the two leading factors towards, well, three. There's three leading factors of inflation right now. There is printing money, which the federal government's never going to stop. That's part of the problem. The cost of food, because we have 20% less, actually 30% less food in the world, in part because of what's happening in the Ukraine. And by the way, that's going to continue into 2024 and into 2025. 2024, the farmers in the Ukraine have already said they're going to plant less food, which means up until 2025, we're going to have less food in the world. So inflation is going to continue on food. The third thing is energy. Energy is one of the three key components of inflation, which makes you poor. And when we close down the XL pipeline, when we lose refineries, the cost of energy increases in the world and in America especially, and that's going to hurt you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Okay. And people don't understand what's been going on here in the United States with agriculture. And that is one of the key components to what's been some of the driving factors in inflation here locally or in the United States and across the world. Okay, not just what's going on in Ukraine. There has also been a huge war against agriculture here in the United States.
So you're talking about the fact that instead of planting wheat and corn and food, we're actually making ethanol and luxury plants, or just leaving fields empty.
Yeah.
Rather than actually feeding people here in the United States. And we're buying the food and we're doing this because the government says they want to buy wheat and corn from China and overseas.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, that's just, it's insane. This is part of the reason why we have inflation, because we're buying corn from China and we're telling people in Idaho and Kansas,
and Iowa,
don't grow anything. Don't grow potatoes. Don't grow corn or wheat. Don't grow it. We're buying it overseas. Mm-hmm. That makes no sense. Or we're using it for ethanol.
Yeah.
Makes no sense whatsoever. But I mean, most people haven't looked into that. They don't realize that we've been doing that. No way. Looks like, if it's correct, news story that Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, is now ending all future elections for the foreseeable future in the Ukraine.
Oh, of course. Of course. And I mean, that we could have seen before this started.
Well, it wasn't very, Ukraine wasn't known for good elections to start with.
No.
So to hear this is not shocking in any kind of way, especially since Ukraine is losing.
Okay. U.S. corn and soybean production down from September of 20. From last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Mike, you're reading, not talking.
Yeah. Basically, I'm looking at trends on corn production, corn and soybean production in the United States, and we can see a definite trend down.
The trend started downwards in 2006. They actually started that, and it really ramped up right about 2011, 2012, when the Obama administration mandated that ethanol must be made in the United States. We actually had that to an extent under Bush as well. Bush started it in 2000. It was reemphasized in 2011 under Obama, where he increased the amount of mandated ethanol in the United States. And we saw that the price of food started climbing significantly since that point. It's
Mhm.
really sick.
Yeah. 2013, we had, well, actually, let me go ahead and share this.
If it's the chart I'm thinking of, it's a crazy spike.
Okay, so this is year over year production since actually since pretty much beginning of the United States, 1867 and above.
Yeah, that's pretty far. That's a long
Okay,
time.
and you can see, yeah, there are some years where we didn't produce a whole lot, or where we reduced, but it tends to be that when we have a year where we didn't produce as much, the next year or next couple of years, we all of a sudden had a big surge. And this goes all the way up through until we start getting into the 70s and 80s. In the 70s, you see quite a big run of increase in production. And then in 80, you see a 1.2 billion bushel drop, followed by 1.4 increase. And then in 83 was a big year for CRP, which was setting side crops. And that resulted in a 4 billion bushel drop in production from the previous year. The following year, we had a $3.4 billion increase, which gives us a net loss of about 0.6 billion. And we had another $2.2 billion or billion bushel loss in 88. Another 3.1 billion loss in 93. And you can see the number of reds are becoming a lot more significant.
Yeah, but once you get to about, and you see it there, it's, I think, 2002 and going forward, all those times you're seeing it go red is directly connected to the United States government mandating ethanol. Those drops are the United States government mandating ethanol production. By the way, we have a glut of ethanol. We have more ethanol than people use because it's not good. It's not effective. It's actually less efficient than gasoline, and it's more of a danger to the environment than gasoline is. That's just a fact. That's just, science. It's not popular science, but it's the actual science. Ethanol poisons the oceans and it's less effective than gasoline, which means you need more of it, which means you create more pollution because you have to use more of it. But all those negatives you saw from 2003 going forward, that coincides with increases in the mandate for ethanol in the United States every single time.
Now, here's something else that I want you to also go to any gas station and try to find non-ethanol fuel.
You can't. It's not allowed. It's illegal.
Well, you can, but typically, if a gas station is offering non-ethanol fuel, it is generally high-octane fuel. And one of the reasons why you can still find non-ethanol fuel is because small engines do not like ethanol at all. It will actually eat out the seals in small engines. Engines for like lawnmowers and chainsaws and stuff like that. That's why you can still find it.
Oh, I thought, as far as I knew, it was illegal.
No.
Oh, by the way. Go ahead.
Your most common octanes of fuel you will find have at least 10% ethanol in them. And in a lot of locales, they are actually trying to increase that to 20 and 30% ethanol.
Just as a side note, remember when I couldn't leave a comment to Dow? That was about 9:08.
Right.
Okay. About 8 minutes into the program. It just so happens that I just received the notification from YouTube at 9:08 saying that they updated the background of my YouTube channel. So apparently, and every time that they update the background, I either lose the ability to comment, I lose videos.
Why the hell is YouTube updating backgrounds for channels?
I have been having pretty much every other day for the last 2 weeks. YouTube has updated my channel consistently, two to three times a day. And I've been losing videos. I've been losing the ability to comment on videos. I don't know if people are paying attention to this. You may get notifications about this. People should check it out. I'm constantly getting updates from YouTube. They're saying, hey, they're fixing something in the background. I don't know what it is. They don't tell me what they're fixing. I can't find anything. I do find that I have less videos. I find that I have more trouble making comments. I have more problems with my live stream, but I don't know what else they're doing. They won't tell me that. That was at 9:08, exactly when I was trying to comment to Dow.
Now, I mean, the truth of the matter is, Michael, you and I can discuss this till we're blue in the face. We can discuss this for hours on end, which we do. And ultimately, what it comes down to is it honestly doesn't matter what we say. We can put the information out there. But until people decide to start taking accountability for themselves and start taking accountability for the fact that they are the ones that are in charge of our governance, we will continue to be governed by others.
Sadly, yeah, but we got to do something to turn this around because
we do, and we try.
No, I know we're trying
every week.
I know we're trying, but I'm talking about the general public. They have to get involved. People who are watching this casually.
That's the thing.
You got to be involved
until everybody else starts getting involved. They are going to continue to be governed by somebody else.
And these people don't have your best interests at heart.
And here's the thing. You can claim all you want that you don't do politics. And with that very statement, you are telling everyone that you would rather submit to a government by somebody else than to govern yourself.
Well, basically, you've just everyone who says, I don't follow politics, you're a slave.
Mm-hmm.
You have given up your agency and your free will and your ability
You've
to
given
make
up your own
choices.
sovereignty.
Yeah. You have no agency. You have no free will. You have nothing. You only have, from that moment going forward, you only have what someone else allows you to have because you're not involved in the process. You've taken yourself out of that system. If you're in Angola, maybe you have a different situation. You're in China, absolutely different situation. Venezuela, I understand. You didn't have that power. We're talking about Americans. You have a choice. You have the power. And the moment you say, I'm not involved, you know, you just gave up everything that the people in China, Angola, and Venezuela, and 2/3 of, actually 3/4 of the world pray to have every day. They beg to have a sliver of the freedom we have here in the United States, which is why millions of people are trying to come here and no one is trying to leave. And you're throwing away all of that freedom that people are dying for. You're throwing it away because, I don't pay attention. I'm watching MILF Manor. I've got Housewives of wherever the hell. I've got a basketball game to watch. That's way more important. Okay. And when the basketball game's done and you turn off whatever TV show that's distracting you and you got to pay your bills and you go, gee, I wonder why it's so expensive. I wonder why I can't buy this or that anymore. I wonder why I can't say certain things at work anymore. I wonder why I can't, why they're telling me I have to eat bugs and you can't buy a house. Gee, I wonder why.
Okay. People like to claim that it's the evil corporations, the nasty businesses, the uber rich. Well, no. That argument only goes so far. And when you refuse to be involved, then you've got nobody to blame but yourself. Point blank. You can try to blame all the uber rich. You can try to blame all these evil, nasty corporations and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, who has a larger voice? A single billionaire or 330 million Americans?
Should be easy to figure that one out. I mean, we're talking about even for people who hate math. Should be easy.
Okay. But hey, I don't follow politics.
Yeah.
So keep on not following politics. That's your choice. And you will get the government that you deserve. And you will be governed by somebody else.
Who doesn't care about you? They only care about maintaining their power.
That's it. That's it exactly. You want to take away power? You want to take away power from billionaires? Start getting active. You want to take power away from politicians? Start getting active. You want to take power away from the parties? Start getting active. You are the only ones that can start changing this. Mike and I do this every week. We bang on this same drum saying, hey, you want change? Then start creating the change. But as long as you're saying, I don't follow politics or I don't do politics, then I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Yeah.
I can't.
And that's why the American hostages held by Hamas are still prisoners, but 13 Filipinos and Thai people were released because Americans are so busy watching, they don't care. You got no time for politics.
You want to
That's why
see what
Americans
happens
are
when you have no
hostile.
time for politics? I'll show you what happens when you have no time for politics.
Well, I could think of a dozen different examples. Which one are you going to show? Because I can think of a
This
dozen.
is what happens when you don't do politics.
Well, yes. Yeah.
This is what happens when you don't do politics. You have a national debt of $33 trillion, which
Actually,
is
it's higher.
equivalent to $100,000 per person, $259,000 per taxpayer.
Where's the total unfunded liabilities? I don't see that right this second.
We have a deficit of $1.7 trillion.
No. Show everyone the total unfunded liability,
I'm looking for it.
which I believe is $181 trillion.
Well, the actual federal deficit, not the official, the actual is $1.8 trillion.
Yeah, and that's the current amount of debt that we have. But if we were to add up the total debt, all of it for the United States, everything that we owe, it is $181 trillion.
Here it is. U.S. unfunded liabilities.
Oh, it went up since last time I looked at it.
$211 trillion.
Someone can double check me on this. The last time I checked, the United States total unfunded liabilities is 3 times the amount of all the money in the world. All of the money in the world is less, 3 times less than the United States total debt. That tells you how big the problem is.
And Biden likes to claim how much he's helped the unemployment. I want you to look at this key figure right here. Manufacturing jobs in 2000 was 17,121,747. Now it is down almost 5 million jobs and is only at 12,960,396.
Yep.
Okay. Biden's claiming he keeps adding these jobs. Well, right here is proof that he's not.
Well, no. We know we all knew he didn't add the jobs. Just gets worse and worse. Really does. People say, "Oh, I can't stand doing math. Too many numbers on the screen." Look at your paycheck. Look at your paycheck. I'll make it simple for you. Look at your paycheck. Do you have more money in your pocket today or in 2019? Difference between the two is how much you don't pay attention to. That's as simple as I can make it. Simple as the math I can make. The amount of money you don't have in your pocket is the difference between paying attention and not paying attention to politics over the last 4 years.
And here's another figure I want you to look at. The official unemployed number is 6,535,814.
Yeah, but no one goes by that. That's not real.
The actual unemployed is 11 million, almost twice that number.
Yeah, it's the difference between the C3 and the C6. The numbers they're getting them from, by the way, the reported number and the actual number come from the very same source, the United States government. Joe Biden knows this. Every Democrat, every Republican, every politician, they know this. This is reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's the same number. Those numbers come from the same source. You get told in the nightly news the smaller number.
And
The
here's
politicians
another
all know
thing.
it's the bigger.
We look at the numbers of people not in the labor force.
100 million.
In 2000, it was 82 million.
Yes.
Now it's almost 100 million.
Yeah. It's actually been over 100 million under the Biden administration about a year and a half ago, but now it's about 99 million. Yeah. It's ridiculous. And that's why unemployment's so low, because that number is about 100 million. Because those people they don't count as unemployed. They are unemployed. They just don't count.
Okay. These are the numbers that are caused by people that don't do politics.
Yes. This is how we get to this much debt. It's the only way possible. You can't organically get to that number without somebody fudging everything. You can't. It's just not possible.
Right. So, as I say again, the choice is yours. The choice is yours. You can either wake up, start being accountable for your own governance, or you can continue with your head in the sand and say, I don't follow politics. And we will continue down the same path that we've been continuing down for generations, and it will continue to get worse. Okay, we're closing in on the 2.5 hour mark, Mike.
Yes,
so I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, just latest bit of news that I saw.
What's that?
Reported by CBS about when we started the show. CBS is reporting that three Americans might be part of the first 50 hostages released by Hamas. 3, which is pitiful because there's at least 22 that we know of, but they're going to release 3 maybe over the next 4 days. This is Biden setting up the low expectations. Biden said in his speech, he named 5 Americans as hostages, 1/4 the actual number. He knew. He's talking about how he did such a great job and he's been right on this, and he can only get 3 Americans released out of at least 22, considering there's 242 hostages. He got 3. He's pitiful. Hold him accountable.
So, again, it's on you. Okay, you can continue to keep your head in the sand. You can continue to keep going down the road we are, or you can start getting involved. With that, we are here every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We urge you to join in on the discussion and through our chats, through YouTube and Facebook. we look forward to our discussions here every week. Yeah, we do a lot of doom and gloom, but that's the shape of the world we're in right now. And if you think we are doing better, then take a look around, folks. We're not. Energy is up. Food prices are up. Housing is down. Okay. Housing costs are up. I don't care where you look. We are not better off than we were just a few short years ago. But yet, there is talk that we are going to put this person back in office again. We are going to keep the same representatives that are in office that have gotten us to this position again. Wake up, America. Wake up. Join us in our discussions. Challenge us on our positions. We urge that. Okay? If you want to be a member on the show, we welcome that too. Okay? I don't care what your political persuasion is. We will gladly have you on our show. Plain and simple. If you want to get involved, please get involved. You can do that through the Liberty First Foundation or any of the other political organizations that are out there. Okay, we are fighting to restore us back to our founding principles of liberty, principles of freedom, principles that put the American citizen in charge of its governance. With that, I'm going to say thank you to everybody that's involved in chat. Do appreciate it. We have some upcoming things getting ready to happen. We'll give more details on those, I'm sure, next week. Frank's been working on a lot of things as far as giveaways and stuff to our members and fans. We are also working on some other things behind the scenes that we will probably shortly after the first of the year be releasing a lot of new things that are going to be happening with Liberty First Foundation. So please stay tuned. I want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving and realize that many of the narratives that are going around about Thanksgiving and other things that have happened historically in this country are false narratives. If you actually look into the history, look at first-person accounts of history from the time periods that they are talking about, you'll find that the narratives that they are trying to push are false. Okay? So do your own research. Figure things out for yourself. Don't trust what somebody else tells you. Because if you do, then hey, you're going to buy a bridge from somebody one of these days. That I'm going to say goodnight. We'll see you next week, every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you, everybody.
Night, everyone.